Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to dive deep into the science behind surveys and personality tests. We're going to figure out what really separates a legit scientific tool from, just a fun little quiz you might take online. Come on, you know you've taken them. Quizzes that tell you which character you are in a TV show or, I don't know, what kind of potato you are. They're a good laugh for sure, but they actually touch on a much bigger, much trickier question that scientists wrestle with every single day.
It's one thing to measure something like height or weight. That's easy. But what about happiness, or burnout, or team morale? How in the world do you put a solid number on a feeling or a complex personality trait? That, right there, is the huge challenge at the heart of psychological measurement.
Well, in the science world, these things have a name. They're called latent variables. They're kind of like these invisible forces that guide so much of what we do and how we feel. And to study them properly, researchers need some seriously well-designed tools. Tools that are, let's just say, a little more sophisticated than your average internet quiz.
So how do they actually do it? How do they build these tools? Well, lucky for us, a group of top researchers in the field have laid out a systematic 7-step process to solve this exact problem, and it's called the measure approach.
The best way to think about it is like the ultimate instruction manual. The source material calls it a one-stop shop, and that's perfect. It's a guide for building a psychological instrument from the absolute ground up, making sure that what you end up with is both accurate and consistent.
And here it is, the whole shebang. Each letter in the word measure stands for a critical step in the journey, from just having an idea all the way to the final statistical proof. This acronym, it's basically our roadmap for the next few minutes. Okay, so the first 3 steps, M, E, and A. This is all about the planning. Think of it like being an architect. Before you even think about laying a single brick or hammering a single nail, you've got to have a detailed plan. You have to know exactly what you're building, and just as important, why. Now, this is absolutely crucial. The most important work happens before you even write a single question. You have to define your purpose, make sure it's grounded in actual science that already exists, and then create a super detailed blueprint. Your Hogwarts quiz? Yeah, it pretty much skips all of this. Its only purpose is for fun, not for scientific accuracy. And check this out. This is what that blueprint can actually look like. This is from a real health study. Those numbers tell the researchers how many questions to write for each topic. See how stress management has way more questions planned? That's not a mistake. It's a deliberate design choice to make sure the survey accurately covers what's most important. All right, the plan is locked in. Now we get to the construction phase with steps S, U, and R. This is where we start to see the survey actually take shape and face its first big tests. It's time to build. So this phase is all about action. You're writing the questions, but you're not done there. Then you hand them over to a bunch of experts to get torn apart, in a good way. And finally, you do a little test run with some real people to see how it all works in the wild. And get this is just a perfect example of how serious this process is. Researchers will often write, say, 80 or 100 questions just to find the absolute best 20 for the final version. They are ruthless about cutting anything that's even a little bit weak or confusing. I'm pretty sure the person who made the "Which sandwich are you?" quiz didn't go through that. Right. So after those hundreds of questions are written, they get sent out to a panel of experts. We're talking about 3 to 5 specialists in that specific field who will go through every single item. They check for clarity, for relevance. It's a critical quality control step that your typical online quiz just completely skips. And before a big show opens on Broadway, they have dress rehearsals, right? Well, that's what a pilot test is. It's the survey's dress rehearsal. It helps catch awkward phrasing or weird technical glitches that even the experts might miss. It's a reality check that is just so important. Okay, here we are. We've reached the final, and maybe the most scientific step of all. E for evaluate. This is the moment of truth. This is where all that hard work gets put to the ultimate test with some serious statistics. When you get right down to it, everything boils down to these 2 big ideas, validity and reliability. Validity is basically asking, are we actually measuring the thing we think we're measuring? And reliability asks, if we do this again tomorrow, are we going to get pretty much the same result? A good scientific tool has to have both. A fun quiz? It probably has neither.
So one way to prove your test is valid is to show that it plays nicely with the older, trusted tests that are already out there. For instance, if you create a brand new survey to measure depression, The scores people get on your survey should be really similar to the scores they get on a classic, gold standard depression survey. That's called convergent validity.
And this is the other side of that coin, and it's so clever. That same new depression survey should have zero relationship to a test measuring something totally different, like, say, your political views. Proving what your test doesn't measure is actually just as important as proving what it does.
Okay, so we've just walked through this incredibly detailed 7-step process. But you might be wondering, why? Why go to all this trouble? Why does this level of scientific rigor actually matter out here in the real world?
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? This isn't just some boring academic exercise. This whole process is what lets us trust the results of scientific studies. It's what makes the tools a therapist uses actually effective. It's what helps all of us make smarter decisions based on good data.
At the end of the day, it's all about building a foundation of trust. Whether we're talking about a huge national study on public health or a simple screening tool used in a doctor's office, the scientific strength of that tool is what gives the answers any real meaning.
And that brings us right back to where we started. The real difference between that silly online quiz and a serious clinical assessment isn't just the questions they ask. It's the massive, invisible, super rigorous scientific process holding the whole thing up.
So, to wrap it all up, a really strong scientific instrument is made of all these parts working together. It needs a super clear purpose, a thoughtful blueprint, a tough review by experts, a real-world test run, and finally, cold, hard proof that it's both valid and reliable. So now you have the inside scoop. You know the science. The next time you come across a survey, a poll, or a personality test, you can stop and ask yourself, hey, was this thing built with this kind of care? Was it really built to measure?